Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Many of us who have entered into relationships certainly know what kind of bliss it can be, especially in the first few days or even weeks. We feel that wonderful romantic feeling, that high that makes us feel like we're on top of the world. But it turns out that sometimes relationships that may not work out, we find ourselves wallowing in a thing called heartbreak. Whether you are freshly out of a relationship or have endured chronic heartbreak, we're going to learn about a particular practice known as Heartbreak Rehab. That's right, the Breakup Rehab book is going to be talked about today as we find out how we can create the love that we want as we work through the pain that we feel with step-by-step actions that ultimately will help you heal your heart and live in harmony with your destiny. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest and author of the book Breakup Rehab, our guest, Rebecca Freedom McClaskey. Rebecca, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, how did you come to create this book? You must have had some devastation in your life. Tell us about that.
It's so fun just reliving my breakups at nauseam.
It sure is, isn't it?
Yeah, the book is really an amalgamation of my professional experience as an addictions counselor, and going to the AA meetings, taking people to the 12-step meetings, and then also going through breakups. And I really had this inspiration where I was like, why isn't there a 12-step process, like a solid, just like the Blue Book, a 12-step process to take us through this journey of breakup? And so I was like, I guess I'm just going to create it. And now we have Breakup Rehab.
Now, when we talk about the 12 steps, it would kind of unique, I think, to kind of go through those a little bit and illuminate the audience as to what they are and how they work. We can go ahead and start with the first one you talk about, which is to let go and forgive. Why is that important?
It's just anytime we try to control or get into the illusion of control in our lives, that our lives become really myopic and narrow, right? That the person that left us is the only good that we can feel in our lives, that something will always be this way and never be this way. So really beginning with the process, especially when your heart's so tender, or if you're carrying the guilt of ending the relationship, it's really important to just forgive yourself and start the process of letting go. So that's why that is step number one.
Now, the next one you talk about, trust your authentic self. What does that mean?
So the authentic self is something, if you go back to Freudian psychology, is like the id, the ego, and the superego. So the id is that petulant little child we have inside of us that's like, give me what I want when I want it now, and this is how it's supposed to happen. If it doesn't happen like this, then life is not going the right way. The ego is just the manager, right? The part of us that shows up and does life every day. And the superego is sort of like this higher consciousness, or what I call in the book the authentic self. Basically, the wise mind, the part of you that's always there and unchangeable no matter what circumstances happen in your life. So it really gives you, it's really just another way of saying, really lean in and trust yourself.
That's something a lot of people have a hard time doing, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Now, why do you think that is?
The cacophony, the noise, and even more so with technology now, that just fills up our lives, right? There was a time where our bodies were really able to plug into the rhythms of nature. We didn't have climate control if it was cold out. And I'm not suggesting that we go back to like Paleolithic times, but I am saying that the less we are in touch with the rhythms of nature, the harder it is to trust ourselves.
Now, I think a lot of times when we have this kind of experience, especially with the heartbreak, that we tend to gain from it more than we feel that we've lost, even though we feel a tremendous sense of loss. So this next step makes a lot of sense when it comes to making wise decisions. Now, what happens there that we somehow become wiser as a result of the pain that we might feel?
Well, I say that faith, the belief in things not yet seen, alchemizes pain into wisdom. So faith changes pain into some wisdom. And pain itself is really, it's just a way of getting your attention to say, like, hey, you had a choice here. You had an awareness to go left, zig instead of zag. You zag, and this is the result. So now what do you want to do about it? And then you go through the period of time necessary. It'll take the time it takes to heal. And then when you go through that, you'll be able to make wise decisions. You'll have more information, more awareness moving forward.
Now, I like this next one here because this is something I think a lot of us, if we can learn to embrace and actually put this into action, we might find that there isn't as much to fear as we think there is, and that is face your fears with love. Why love?
What I've really learned through the process of going through breakup is that, and also just loss in general, having both my parents died in my 20s, is that love never dies. It doesn't die. It doesn't leave you. It doesn't forsake you. It doesn't go in. Fear makes you think that you're absent of love, that no one will love you. You're not good enough. You're too much. You're some sort of lie that we carry around, some sort of skewed belief that's creating our lives. But love always is like, you have a new opportunity. There's always a new day dawning. There will always be a new day dawning. The soul carries on. Your body carries on. Carry on. And so when you face your fears with love, you're really gracious to yourself and say, I tried and I can try again.
You could always have a redo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Now, live your purpose. So many times people may not know what that is. How do they kind of get into alignment with what that is so that they can be able to do that particular step?
I really think breaking up is
there you go.
helps us line up with our purpose. And I mean that not to be glib about it, but whatever processes we go through, romantic or otherwise, when we come to a crossroads where we feel like we failed, it really is a period of refinement. And your purpose is found in those moments of refinement. It's found in the inspiration that comes when you're like, hey, I thought it was going to look like this, but I can do this. I never imagined I'd be a breakup specialist. Like when I was, young and playing with Barbies, I didn't think, I'll grow up and be a breakup specialist. But through the series of different events in my life, it has led me to my purpose. And I would say the same, that breakup can really be a rich time to dig into what exactly inspires you.
I like this next step here, step number 6, where you talk about examine your judgment and respond with compassion. And the reason why that, to me, kind of appeals, especially in a situation where somebody perhaps has left you, the kinds of things we think about that other person, how we feel maybe jilted or whatever it is that you feel here, and so you tend to blame them in a way that you feel like you're the victim. And quite often when you really examine those judgments that you may have, you may realize what exactly it is you're feeling that you didn't think of before. And what I mean by that is I remember a breakup that I had, and immediately what I started seeing within myself with the reasons that I felt that I really liked this person was because I felt worthy, deserving. And I realized, but there's not really any love there. I'm looking for something else that I don't feel in myself. So when I started reversing that judgment, and kind of looking at it that way, I realized, I really wouldn't have been with that person in the first place. That it had nothing to do with just, connecting and having an enjoyable relationship and even a friendship, but it had to do with something other than that, and that was the pain that I was feeling.
And so often after a breakup, we try to get back together with our exes if we're the one who was dumped, because we think that they will restore our wholeness. And that's because we have not yet faced our judgments and responded or examined our judgments and responded with compassion. The minute we're able to really surrender our judgments and set them aside, we'll see more of our true selves. And it really requires that in itself is a journey, and it's fertile ground after a breakup to not try to rush back to your ex or have a hot and cold relationship, but really to say, hold on, slow down, stop. Let me figure out what parts of me need compassion.
especially when it comes to wanting, as you said, to get back with them. I think a lot of times it's so we don't feel that hurt, like, well, they left me, but this is a chance for me to kind of maybe redeem myself a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why you should practice humility and gratitude. Tell us about that.
Yeah, step number 7. There's nothing more humbling than going through a breakup. If you're the person who initiated the breakup, you could be like, gosh, how did I attract this person again? Like, why am I in the same pattern again? And that can be really humbling if you let it. If you let yourself enter into self-examination of your choices. And that's humility allows for you to do that. Pride stops you from doing that. You just want to be right. And there's a saying, you can be right or you can be at peace. And then one of the ways, of course, I love Esther Hicks I was listening to. She's like, don't love things that are hard to love. Like the person that broke up with you, like that's hard to love because there's so much emotion coming up. Like love your socks that you have on. Love the food you eat. Love the bed you sleep in. Love the slippers. Love the hot shower. Love the things that are just easy to love. And in doing so, you'll feel a rush of gratitude come into your life. And it makes it easier. It actually really helps to repair the pain and the heartbreak.
This next one here, when I was reading this last night in your book, I thought was pretty interesting because it talks about pride. And quickly in your book you say, you can be proud of yourself for leaving a bad relationship, which is good, but you can have pride and think you're better than anyone else because you left that relationship, which is vanity. And I looked at that and I thought, yeah, I've sort of either had experience or know people who have had that experience. And the question seemed to be asked, but isn't there a thing called good pride?
It's a really interesting one of the 7 deadly sins, and I talk about that in the book. To overcome pride is to say, I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, and I also can't expect that my spouse or ex-boyfriend or person I dated has the answers either. Even if because sometimes we try to answer life with a one-night stand. We just try to live in like instant gratification, and pride will have you looping back to that thing of like, oh, I don't get broken up with, or people can't hurt me.
Especially with the one-night stand thing, huh?
Yeah, and it really keeps you stuck instead of surrendering it and then being able to grow even more.
Now, recognize the strength in your vulnerability. I think that's something people don't really think they want to feel, especially after a breakup, do they?
We don't want to feel it ever. We built a society of stoicism, vulnerability being synonymous with weakness, right? And an inability to skillfully run your life. Except, ironically, the more skilled you are at being in touch with your emotions, your wants and your needs, and communicating those, the more vulnerable you are and the more mastery you have over your life. And mastery certainly is a form of strength where I've chosen relationships where I've just jumped in and got in really fast, which is, I feel like, unskilled, instead of where I was trading sex for intimacy, instead of slowing down and really getting to know the person and being vulnerable with them, like actually showing them who I am as a person and creating greater connection. So that is really the strength in your vulnerability, when you can create true, grounded connection and be patient and let that connection grow.
Now, when you maintain your integrity, what specifically is it we're trying to do there? Is that not selling out or doing those things that we were just talking about?
Yeah, so integrity is right thought, right speech, right action, as I describe it in this book, was taken from the Buddhist principles. And essentially, there's 2 sides of things. If you break up with somebody, if you initiate that breakup, don't go back for 90 days. Just don't. Like, why would you break up with somebody if it wasn't a total in your integrity to do so, right? Are you trying to create jealousy, revenge, manipulation? That's not love. That's not relationship. And if you get broken up with, don't try to go back to your ex for 90 days. Just don't do it. Just take your time, mend your heart, heal, go through and I will say, breakups are hard on the body. They're hard on the mind, but they can be you can lose your appetite, your sleep. It's hard on the body. So your integrity is all about keeping it something in integrity, keeping it together. Is really about a time of taking care of your body, your mind, your soul, your spirit. So maintaining your integrity means stick to your word and take that 90-day period to heal.
I think that's actually a very wise piece of advice, as we were saying earlier, is that, especially if somebody leaves you, that you try to get back, because it's actually, you're trying to make yourself whole again. And certainly if you're going in this direction, I think you're going to cause yourself a lot more heartache than you really need to. Yeah,
it's like you're just going to, I say that oftentimes we try to go back to the scene of the crime and get back together with a murder weapon. What? Maybe don't impale yourself on that again, and step back and give. And relationships come back together all the time. All the time. They absolutely do. But they're going to be the same relationship if the people don't change. If they don't grow in their understanding, which is really, steps to 11, own your power to love. Own your power to love and love yourself.
Now, own your power to love. That sounds pretty intriguing. What does that mean exactly?
So we give it away. We think, if this person loves me, then I'm lovable.
There you go.
If someone said, if I'm approved, and there's different personality types that really need validation and approval. It's not a bad thing. It's very much how we kind of navigate the world. Fine. But when you own your power to love, it really is about that depth of self-love, that knowing that if you screw up, you'll get another chance. You can try again. There's endless choices. And I love what Tyler Perry, he has a character called Medea, says. She's like, there's only two places you can have peace in this world. It's in your house and in the grave. And she's like, I would rather be in a corner with a goldfish and a puppy and be happy than someone coming up in my house causing me all sorts of drama. And we do that sometimes because we disavow our own power to love ourselves, right? We just wait for somebody else to show up and do it for us. And I'm like, you take care of that yourself.
Right. And it's funny you bring that up. I remember a time I was talking with someone, and I got to know her daughter. And then one time her daughter was over with her boyfriend, and I could see clearly the interesting thing about the relationship. Her daughter was very outspoken and bold, and this guy seemed to be kind of maybe a little meek, quiet, reserved. And at one point he was saying why he really liked her, loved her in the relationship is because of that particular reason, that she was outspoken and bold and stood up for herself. And I said, I'm thinking to myself, I don't see this relationship lasting too long, because somebody really needs to kind of counterbalance her so they work well together, and this guy just isn't it. And sure enough, I think it was just a couple of months later, I was asking, how she was doing, and they were out of that relationship. Apparently she just, I guess, got tired of bossing them around or whatever it was. But it's funny how that works in relationships when we try to reach out and bring in that quality a person has that we want for ourselves, and why we don't work on that for ourselves.
Well, that's how we learn. That's how we learn from relationship to relationship, that you form these attachments and you figure out, okay. It's like it's our own personal Wizard of Oz journey. It was there all along. we have to walk our own yellow brick road to find that out.
Now, the last step here is create the love that you want. And it's funny when we come out of a relationship, let's just say in this analogy that it was a person that left us, and we think, these are the things I would like to have in the next person. But then you have to ask yourself, as you want that, would you be something that person wants to be with? And that becomes a very interesting question, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. It's a really great question. I'm going to say this in two different ways. The duration of a relationship, the longevity of it, is not the barometer of success of it. Some people stay together for 40 years and are miserable for 38.
Right.
For whatever reason, life just had them stay together. Also, happiness is not necessarily the barometer of a successful relationship, because happiness is transient as well. I would say the core of a relationship that I would consider successful is if you get to be more of who you are. If you're evolving and growing in awareness and understanding, you're not shutting yourself off or cutting yourself off to be in that relationship, but you're able to openly communicate with your partner. And certainly, breakdown in communication is the number one reason we break up, that there's just not enough skill set there. There's two opposite points of view. The value systems just don't line up, but we sure try to stick together, and oftentimes sex keeps us together longer than we should. So creating the love you want is really about giving yourself the grace and mercy to just live life and experience all it has for you.
Absolutely. And certainly in time, as you grow with that, then you'll find that kind of partner that you were dreaming of is somebody that you're going to be having a wonderful connection with, because you'll be ready for each other.
Huge. Yeah, you'll be ready. You'll match up on that, the idea of what connection feels like to you and what commitment feels like to you, and being able to be ready for each other.
The book is Breakup Rehab. Our guest joining us here, Rebecca Freedom McClaskey. You can also find more information on YouTube. See some of your talks, I understand. Mm-hmm. Very good. And how can they go? Is there a website where they can find out more about how to get the book, things like that?
Absolutely, yeah. Just to the point of my YouTube, it's also my own podcast called Heard Not Seen. I just completed episode 56 on it, called Dream a Bigger Dream. And they can go to my website at RebeccaFreedom.com. That's REBEKAH freedom.com to be able to access all the goods that I have, including the book.
Very good. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. If you're in a breakup rehab, you can also discover a bit more by visiting us at Beyond50Radio.com. That is the number 50. We do encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter and keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50, as well as upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.